What's up, everybody? So much content happening today. So much going on. Make sure you subscribe and hit that reminder bell so you don't miss not one, but two special weekend videos that we're recording today. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Sarah Boone, two new letters she wrote to the court, and the actual hearing on her attorney's motion to withdraw. You do not want to miss that. And then on Sunday, we're going to talk about Lori Vallow's notice of appeal and the 16 different issues, some very legitimate, some not so legitimate, that her team found in the trial and the time leading up to it. But today, in this video, more Murdaugh stuff. And this case is truly, we said it from the jump. The first time I looked at this case, when we looked at the Satterfield situation, we looked at the allegations with his family. It's been one of the wildest cases I've ever seen, heard, read, been a part of in my entire life. And it does not stop. All the people involved, all the lawyers involved, even now the jurors, the witnesses, law enforcement. Everywhere you look, there's drama. Everywhere you look, there's something that just doesn't feel right and doesn't sit right. And I just think we got to keep talking about it. I got to hear what you guys think about this. What is the perception of the public? Legally speaking, we're going to answer a lot of questions today. We are going to listen to two different videos or watch two videos together. Then we're going to look back at that motion for new trial again and compare the affidavit with some of the other parts based on what some of the videos say. And then we're going to look at some tweets. So we've got it all today. We've got it all. And the first video we're going to watch, again, as people join, is an explanation to answer a question so many of you had that I answered on the last video, but I think it's better coming from the horse's mouth. So many people are asking, do they have to prove, meaning Murdaugh's team, that, yes, hit the like button, get that out of the way. Thank you, Didar. Does Murdaugh's team have to prove that the clerk of court's actions, if true, affected the verdict or changed the verdict? Do they have to prove that? Because a lot of people think they do, and a lot of people have asked me that question. So I figured who better to listen to explain it than Murdaugh's lawyers. And no, they're not coming on the show. We're going to watch their Good Morning America or whatever this is, some interview that they did. They've done plenty of them talking about this new trial and how illegal and horrible the actions of the court clerk were. So let's listen to their explanation together.
Down by attorneys Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin.
Oops. I have it on my speed. I've got to turn it down to normal. All right, here we go.
Alec Murdaugh's defense team. Dick, Jim, good morning to both of you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Craig.
You've got affidavits, you've got interviews from 3 jurors and 1 dismissed juror. And in one of the affidavits here, this is juror 630. Juror 630 says, quote, according to the affidavit, I had questions about Mr. Murdaugh's guilt, but voted guilty because I felt pressured by the other jurors. The juror there did not say he felt pressured by Becky Hill. So are you accusing her of actually influencing the verdict or just acting improperly?
Craig, anytime there's outside influence in the sanctity of the jury room, it is improper. And the legal question is not whether the outcome of the trial would have been different. The question is whether the information provided to the jury outside the confines of the courtroom is prejudicial. You can never go back and rewind the clock or put the toothpaste back in the tube. So that's a game that we can't play. But what we do know is the conduct that the jurors have reported to us is highly improper and frankly illegal.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Dick, though, but to get this new trial, you're going to have to prove that whatever Becky did or said would have had some sort of material impact on the verdict, correct?
And before all of you that already know the answer or watch our other videos, this is a question a lot of people have and don't understand, and it makes sense because so many other appellate issues, this is the burden. You have to actually prove there would have been a different outcome. It would change the outcome of the case. This is a burden for plenty of different ways that you argue different things in criminal appeals. Okay, so just to not crush anybody that thinks that way, because a lot of people on the chat have thought that way. So let's listen to their answer, though, because the answer is no.
Wrong. We've got to show she acted improperly. If improper conduct occurred, there is a presumption that we get a new trial. I mean, it is the United States Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals of South Carolina have all ruled on this issue. I've got to say, we couldn't find a single case where the clerk of court did something like this, but we did.
That should say something. So they did all this research and they did find that any interaction like this is a presumption of you get a new trial, but usually it's the bailiffs that talk to the jury. Usually it's the bailiffs and they're cops. So, I mean, I feel like, they're definitely supposed to be unbiased parties and they're definitely supposed to be part of the courtroom personnel, and juries absolutely love and trust the bailiffs. But for most jurors that understand it, or if they think like law enforcement sticks together or whatever, the blue line, they think the bailiff is probably on the side with the law enforcement, which is usually against the criminal defendant. So somebody, and not to say that that's actually what happens, because the bailiff is a separate, position. They're not out there arresting people in this part of their career, at least. But the clerk of court is even more removed than that, even more unbiased and central than a bailiff, I would think, just off of first glance. And yet most of the case law where there is this issue, it's bailiffs, because it's so unusual for a clerk of court to do something like this. So unusual. That's why, I'm floored at this and so surprised and thinking we can't have this. We've got to deter this. If what they're saying is true, there has to be a new trial. There has to be some repercussions for this clerk. There has to be an example made so other clerks don't do this, whether she wrote the book and made money or not. I hear people pointing that out as if that's going to prove that this didn't happen. There may be something else in the video later. I am going to talk later in the video about something that I think pokes a major hole in Murdaugh's team's argument and could show some potential bias and credibility issues, which we're going to talk about. But the fact that she didn't make money on the book, I don't think proves that she didn't do any of this. Maybe she thought she was going to make money. By the way, self-published books can still make money. People realize that, right? Yeah, you want to get an advance, you want to get a big book deal, whatever. But if you self-publish a book and it makes a ton of money, you get a bigger chunk of that money, I would think. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. I'm not an expert on that. But none of that, whether or not she made money on the book, doesn't change the fact that if she did this stuff, there need to be repercussions so people don't do it for any reason, money, fame, or otherwise in the future.
Did find a couple of cases where bailiffs did this. So there are cases where court officials say things, do things that indicate they have an opinion or that they interfere in the dissemination of information to the jury.
Edmo. Good point. Could be so suspicious, and no clerks ever do this, and neither did she. That could be true as well.
Outside the courtroom. So no, we don't have to show that it would have made a material difference.
This motion is going to have to be heard by the same trial judge who oversaw the case, Judge Newman. Are you planning on asking for a new judge?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Court of Appeals has to rule it goes back. Secondly, I think Judge Newman.
What he meant when he said the Court of Appeals has to rule it goes back is they asked to wait to do the appeal so that the trial court can hear this motion for new trial, because technically we should be in the appellate phase right now. So we first have to hear if the appellate court says, okay, yes, you can do this, go back and ask for the new trial. If they don't, and it's just got to go to appeal, that'll kind of change the process and how things happen as well. So first we're waiting on the appellate court's ruling, then it'll go back to the trial court for this evidentiary hearing if the appellate court says so.
Newman realizes based on our filings that he's a witness. So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think Judge Newman is going to carefully examine. I have the greatest respect for him, and I think he's going to examine the pleadings and the issues, and may conclude, as we have, that he's going to be a witness in this process.
Why would he be called as a witness?
Well, there's at least two instances where it was reported to him. One instance where clearly it was reported to him that the clerk had a conversation with a juror outside the confines of the jury room, not under his direction. And he says, as we say in the filings, he found that unsettling. The question is, did he follow it up with questions? If not, why not? What happened there? And then there's another instance.
Remember that. He could be a witness because he had some discussions with some of these jurors. Did he ask the right questions? Did he follow up enough? Did he get information like he should have? Remember that, because some stuff's coming later in the video that's going to be important.
Instance involving information concerning some Facebook posts that apparently were made up, and we need to ask him about that.
Jim, the reality is, last question. The reality is, a couple of weeks, Alec Murdaugh set to plead guilty reportedly to a slew of other federal crimes, federal financial crimes. There's still some outstanding state crimes as well. He is likely going to spend the rest of his life in prison, regardless of the outcome here. What do you say to some who might suggest you guys are just trying to sow the seeds of doubt, perhaps change public perception that Alec Murdaugh did in fact kill his wife and son?
Well, Craig, we strongly believe he did not kill his wife and son. He has admitted readily, since September of 2021 that he engaged in financial fraud, financial misconduct to support opioid addiction. He has never denied that. Now, he's ready to accept the punishment for that. Is that life in prison without parole? We don't think so. We think it's substantially less than that. But, as his son has said, and we have all said, a
I think my whole computer just shut down and came back up. So, and I see the chat letting me know. Can you let me know if you can hear me now? And if so, we will jump back into it, but that was annoying. Sorry about that. Can everybody hear me now? Yeah, no, I'm back. Okay, yes, we can hear you. Sorry, my bad, everybody. I don't know what the heck happened there. What was funny is somebody said Dick Harpootlian is a cockroach right before that happened, and I wonder if he's controlling the interwebs or something. So that's my bad. That's my bad, people. I apologize. So let's get to some of your. We can be done with them. There was like 30 seconds left anyway, so we'll be done with that interview, and let's answer some questions. If it's proven that Beck Hill did tamper with the jury, does that open up the floodgates to investigate any jury trial she's been a part of? No, it would be specifically connected to this trial. And if they want to open up any other trial she was a part of, then they would have to prove misconduct in that trial. So no. And this is, again, a very common question. Joe, if the 3 says she interacted, but the rest of the jurors said no, she didn't, what happens? If it's under oath testimony, then it's going to be up to the discretion of the court as to whether or not they're telling the truth and the credibility of the jurors that say that she did interact with them, and potentially color some of the testimony or some of the defenses or anything like that. Then I think the court, if I was a judge, I would have to grant a new trial. If 3 came out, if it was just 1, especially if it was just the juror that was dismissed and didn't take part in the deliberations, then I probably would not grant a new trial. But based on the amount that they have and the amount of smoke, again, we still have to see what actually comes out in the evidentiary hearing when there's cross-examination and things like that. But I don't know. There seems to be too much smoke at this point for me. They polled the juries and they all said it was their verdict. If not, they already lied once. So again, and this I think comes back to the point we just answered. It does not have to change the verdict in order for them to get a new trial. So that could still be their verdict. And under the law and the burden in this case, in this situation, there could still be a new trial. Marty, if she didn't do all of this, what have the jurors got to gain from saying she did? It's a great point, Marty. People can say Murdaugh paid him off. I guess money, that would be a reason. They're not going to get famous over this. They're not going to get good publicity over this. They're probably going to ask for this to be as private as possible. It's probably not going to work, but I don't know what they have to gain. I really don't. Salty Beach. Question. In one of the filings, it said that no public official shall use their position to make money. Isn't that what Poot is doing? Legislator, defense attorney. So this is interesting. So there are certain jurisdictions that allow you to do both. And he can't use his position as a state legislator to change the laws or rules to help him make more money as a lawyer. It's a very interesting and convoluted kind of conversation. I actually like the idea personally of like our founding fathers, how politicians have jobs that they actually go back and work and understand what it's like to run a business and live in the world like the rest of us. And then they go do politics once in a while or whenever session is in. I like that better than career politicians who go in poor and not poor, I shouldn't say poor, who go in as, normal, successful business people or whatever, and then come out worth hundreds of millions of dollars after, being a public servant. That's crazy. Somebody once told me, and it stuck with me, that the thing that would be most shocking to our founding fathers is that being a politician is a full-time job that somebody does all the time. And I agree with it, on both sides of the aisle. Nicholas, have you seen the letter from the ethics board regarding her book? If not, I can send it to you. I have not, Nicholas. Please do send it to me. That would be great. Elf, is it true one lawyer is defending two jurors? Can he represent both? So if there would be a conflict between the two jurors, he would need a conflict waiver between those two jurors. We don't know that exists at this point. Maybe there is a conflict waiver. If not, I think he can represent both at this point from what we know, but that could, of course, change. And there's going to be more on that later. We're about to hear from that lawyer who represents the two jurors. Studi, Peter, since she was elected and SLED was also involved, is there a possibility of double jeopardy? No, this would not create a situation of double jeopardy. Not that they might not ask for it, but Lady Law. So what are the next steps? I think he deserves a new trial. The appellate court needs to send it back down to the state court, and the state court needs to make a decision as to whether or not he needs he gets a new trial. Stephanie, and possible vibes or positive vibes, please, from Amazing Lawyer family. Water skiing accident over Labor Day, tore hamstring where it inserts to the pelvis. We'll find out if I need surgery this afternoon. Thank you, Peter, for cultivating an amazing community. Yes, absolutely, Stephanie. I've had a bunch of friends that tore their hamstrings playing football, different, ages in life from really young to all the way through college. And it bruises up all nasty. It's one of the most painful things, hard to walk through. So it's going to be a painful recovery. So please, everybody, send it Stephanie's way. And Stephanie will be praying that the surgery goes well if you do have one, or that the recovery is as quick and smooth as it possibly can be. Mandy said, I sent you the letter today. Yes, a lot of people sent me Sarah Boone's letters, and I will absolutely be doing a video on it that's going to post tomorrow morning. So don't miss that Sarah Boone stuff coming out. Thank you, Kimberly Jolly, for the super chat here. And let's jump into our next video where people want to know, why didn't the jurors speak up during the trial? If they knew all this was going on, if they saw and heard the clerk of court doing this way, weren't they asked every day and told not to do exactly what was happening? So how is this possible that they want to talk about it now? And what are those jurors saying? What is their position? What is the lawyer who represents them saying? Well, in this interview, we get to hear from that lawyer and we get some answers to those questions.
Trial alleging jury tampering by the clerk of court, Rebecca Hill. Now, Murdaugh's attorneys detailed those allegations in front of the South Carolina Court of Appeals and outlined them in a press conference Tuesday afternoon.
When we considered what factors and what we should and should not do and considered whether he should take the stand,
We've already seen this.
The clerk told jurors not to be misled by the defense, not to be fooled.
We were not done the books.
There was no book deal, and they self-published the book. Defense attorney Dick Harpootlian appeared on Good Morning America and encouraged other jurors.
Mandy, sorry, that's my bad. The Ethics Commission letter. Okay, I will try to take a look while this video is playing.
To seek legal counsel.
The two jurors that gave us affidavits hired a lawyer, Joe McCullough, before they would talk to us and before they gave us the affidavits. The other jurors out there are on a group text, and we are reasonably informed that last week when these allegations began to surface, one of the jurors said, quote, who's talking? I'm concerned that these jurors don't understand the import of what's getting ready to happen. They need to get lawyers. They need to understand they may have some exposure, and they need to be careful before they start talking to the FBI or SLED or even us.
So the jurors have a chat and they said, who's talking? That's not great. And my guess is that that chat is going to be screenshotted and used as evidence. And whoever sent that is going to have to answer for that. And again, this right here, what he just said is that the jurors should get lawyers. They could be implicated. They don't understand how serious this is. Well, a very familiar legal face is going to respond to this via Twitter. So keep in mind these comments right here by Dick Harpootlian, because Eric Bland, who we will hear from later via Twitter, did not like those comments.
All right, here to discuss is criminal defense attorney Joe McCullough, who, as you heard, is representing 2 of the Murdaugh jurors who gave affidavits. Joe, great to see you. Thank you so much for taking out time to be on the show with me tonight. Really appreciate it, man. All right, let's start off first and foremost. Just standing afar from this situation, I know you represent 2 of the jurors, but standing afar, I just got to get your reaction to some of the claims being made by the Murdaugh defense.
Well, the claims don't please me as a trial lawyer or.
Real quick, before we listen to what he has to say, because a lot of people are talking about this, and I think it's really interesting how all interconnected this is. So this guy apparently used to be partners or work with Dick Harpootlian, but there's also evidence that he's been representing at least the egg juror who was dismissed and didn't come to the verdict all the way back in March. So it's interesting. And as we know with Eric Bland, when we're about to hear from him, we know he represented a bunch of victims that have sued Alec Murdaugh and collected from Alec Murdaugh and said there's been some not so nice things said back and forth between Eric Bland and Murdaugh's attorneys as well. So this guy who seems to, at least be friendly with Dick Harpootlian is representing a couple jurors. Eric Bland is representing a couple jurors. Do we think those jurors are going to have the same stories? Probably not. What's that going to look like? A couple jurors say this, a couple jurors say that. Becky Hill says this. It's going to get really interesting, but let's hear what he has to say about those jurors that he represents.
As a person who spent 6 weeks in the courtroom watching this trial and having a relationship with the clerk of court who did a good job in running that courtroom and courthouse.
And he was at the trial for all 6 weeks. Why? Why was he at the trial all 6 weeks? It's interesting.
So I don't take any great pleasure in where we find ourselves. So these are tough allegations. The defense has a job to do. The prosecution.
He froze, not me this time.
All right, it looks like we've
happens to the best of us, bud.
If the prosecution has to unwind its victory lap, that's going to be a bitter pill.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, you mentioned Becky Hill. I know it's a small community out there. I would imagine you know her or have certainly been in the courtroom where she was the clerk of the court. She was handling a case she might have been involved in. What can you tell me about her and your interactions with her in the past?
Well, I had limited interactions. I don't do a lot of business down in the Low Country, or at least in that county.
By the way, everybody's saying, oh, it's such a small town, that's why this is happening. Most of these lawyers like Harpootlian, Griffin, and him all say, oh, I don't do a lot of work down in the small county or the Low Country. South Carolina is not that small of a state. I know people are saying, oh, it's, everybody knows everybody. I think there are more lawyers than just Murdaugh's lawyers and Eric Bland and Ronnie Richter in South Carolina. But I think there's a reason they're also interconnected in this case.
I found her to be a very charming person and one who appeared to be doing her job. These allegations are troubling. They're going to have to be examined, and there may be innocent explanations, and there may not be. But she, I understand today, has hired her own set of lawyers, and that's appropriate and necessary. And my clients, for their part, are courageous ladies who came forward reluctantly, who agreed to speak to the defense. And I think all of this just now is in the hands of the court.
All right, so let's talk about your involvement in the case now. I can tell you, Joe, that it has raised a few eyebrows. Everyone knows that you're friendly with Dick Harpootlian and used to work together. Guys have been colleagues for any number of years. I know you were involved with them in the defense, not helping them, but you would go to dinner and were getting some updates on the case. And now here you are representing two of the jurors that could be responsible for getting a new trial for their client. Tell me how you got involved in this case.
Well, I'm no friend of Alec Murdaugh since I was busy suing him throughout the 6 weeks of this trial.
Listen, guys, trust me. I don't like this guy either. I don't like this guy either. I was suing him just like all of his business partners were and everybody else. But we got to remember back to Dick Harpootlian, whose honor it was to represent Alec Murdaugh. And in my opinion, whether or not he committed the crimes of which he was convicted that they're still fighting about, wouldn't be an honor to represent somebody who has admittedly done what Alec Murdaugh did. So that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. But this guy's want to say, I am not biased towards Alec Murdaugh at all.
Absolutely correct. Dick Harpootlian is a person I've known for decades. We were law partners. I've known Jim Griffin. We've been on opposite sides of cases and on the same side of cases. I've worked with some of the prosecution team and tried cases against them. So South Carolina is about that big. Everybody knows everybody. The fact that I went to dinner at the defense team's quarters during the trial, I believe I also drank coffee and had breakfast with the prosecutors. So,
which, just so you know, most criminal courthouses have like a cafe or something like that where everybody goes, and there's actually like here in the Sixth Circuit where there's like a table where the lawyers sit. It's like prosecutors sit there, defense lawyers sit there, drink coffee, eat breakfast. It's the older guard, especially. Like my dad loves it, still talks about it now. He goes and does it when he goes to court. Whoever's there sits there, talks, hangs out. And we've already talked about this a million times. Most defense lawyers used to be prosecutors. So in the criminal world, everybody kind of knows each other, but not quite this closely. I will say this is a bit unusual with how many of the same faces we continue to see over and over again, in whether it's Satterfield or Stephen Smith or these jurors, or, Alec Murdaugh, or even like the defense case where Alec Murdaugh's the lawyer that was defending his civil case or prosecuting his civil case all comes in and they're involved as well. It's all very interesting.
That 6 weeks was a long 6 weeks where virtually everyone interacted on varying levels. How I came to be involved on behalf of these jurors is I was asked to be. Initially, I was asked right after the trial to help jurors not be bothered by media, by the press.
So he was asked, and my first question is, asked by whom? Because if you were a juror, who would you ask? Like, who would you ask to be protected? Just a question for people that don't know a lawyer. Well, all of you guys know a lawyer, of course, now. But like, who would you even ask? Was she referred to him by Dick Harpootlian? I don't know, but that's interesting to me. Like, who would she ask? Joe Gottman asking, can they bring new evidence if there is a new trial? Yes, potentially. Canadian said on replay, so not sure if you addressed it yet. Yep, he just addressed that he was Poot's law partner. John, bright side is we may get Gigi back as court observer. Bev said, Peter, please talk me off the ledge regarding the state of our legal system and tell me this whole deal is unheard of. I'm legit shook that a person accused of a crime would ever face a scenario like this. So one of the things that's interesting is, and Joni Martin asked kind of a similar question, doesn't this just kind of make you want to throw your hands up? And yes, it does. What's interesting about this is why in the world would the clerk of court do this? If she didn't have $1 million book deal, why would she do this? And it can really either come from fame or money or hatred of Alec Murdaugh. And again, a lot of people hated Alec Murdaugh, and I understand that. And this is what Bev's kind of talking about. Just because you've been accused of a crime doesn't mean you did it. This guy admittedly screwed a lot of people in the worst of the worst situations. So he deserves whatever he's getting. But this cannot be how we do it. And even if she did not affect the jury, the jury verdict, We cannot allow court systems to run this way and clerks of court and elected officials to do this. Because you might not be mad about it now because of the type of person you believe Alec Murdaugh is, but oof, this cannot be how it's done. Katie, thank you so much for the referral to a lawyer up here in Gainesville for a ridiculous C&D. I got the case resolved quickly and appreciate you so much. Thank you, Katie. We're always interested in trying to connect people where we can, regardless of what the issue is. Because again, most of what we only take are wrongful death and catastrophic injury cases and car accidents and things like that. So I'm glad we were able to help you out. Pat, I turned 82 yesterday and still learning. Thanks, Pat. You're a legend. You're a legend, Pat. West Egg. Hi, Peter. If the clerk is found to have acted in an improper way, could other people convicted when she was a clerk use this for grounds for appeal? It's amazing how many people are wondering this. And that just tells me, like, you guys are smart. You're thinking like the domino effect, the ripple effect, because we've talked about it in a lot of different cases. But in this specific case, it's not like a cop planting evidence. In this case, they would have to prove that she acted improperly in other cases. And really the only way to do that, talk to other jurors. Are other jurors really going to want to come forward and do that? Maybe, maybe not. But if a jury from another trial that she was the clerk of court and is like, yeah, she did that to me too, came forward, then it could affect other cases. Just the fact that she did it and they prove it just in this case would not automatically affect other cases. Kimberly, is it legal for the defense to track down jurors after a trial? So your language of track down is interesting. They are absolutely allowed to reach out to jurors and ask them questions. They are not allowed to stalk and harass jurors. So knocking on their door, and if a juror says go away, they have to go away. They can't sit there overnight and wait and bombard them and corner them at work. They can't do things like that. Dr. Bob Gaming, everyone needs a fair shot. Doesn't matter on what is going on outside. I believe that this guy always needs a fair shot no matter what he has done. Dr. Bob, I literally couldn't have said it better myself. All right, so we still haven't gotten to the actual question that a lot of you had, which is, why didn't they say anything to the judge when this was happening? And that's about to be asked of this lawyer.
So I stood in a protective role at that time, trying to get them some peace and privacy. And I still have that role now. These jurors are courageous. They deserve the respect of the public for giving their versions of events and having the courage to do that. They don't deserve to be rolled and trolled by some of the more obsessed public out there.
Joe, let me ask you. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, there's some suggestion that if this was going on, some of the things, they seem so egregious. At some point, do you have any explanation for why the jurors might not have gone to the judge and told the judge what was going on?
Well, yeah, I think that a jury is intimidated by the authority of the judge. This is a judge who, at one point, determined that the jury's selection of a four-person was not his selection, and so he replaced the jury's selection. But I think that juries they've assumed a role. They become followers. They're not leaders. They're certainly not going to provoke authority.
Some jurors are leaders, legitimately. Some jurors are absolutely leaders. But some are absolutely followers, are absolutely going to fall in line. Different people have different personalities. So I wouldn't say all jurors are one or the other, but for sure there are usually both kinds on every jury.
In the courtroom, and I think that their silence in this matter is absolutely understandable to me.
And Joe,
he basically said, why didn't they say anything? Well, they're basically followers. They were silent. They were too scared. They didn't understand the process. And that is a very plausible explanation. That's kind of what I said. That's probably what happened, especially when it's the clerk of court. And you see the relationship between the judge and the clerk. You're not going to accuse the clerk of something, especially if it's not egregious and she's just saying stuff like, oh, don't be fooled, or, whatever that you might not even know is improper as a juror. It's a plausible explanation.
Let me ask you, so what's next now for your clients? Because clearly she's claiming, or Becky Hill is claiming, this stuff is not true. Somebody's lying here. What's next for your clients?
Well, I think there's an investigation that's next. And the two jurors I represent, the other jurors some of whom have been on television, flown to New York, talked freely to the press, now will find themselves in rooms with investigators, if not in a courtroom under oath, and they're going to have to answer questions about their best recollections. So this is it's not really a contest of numbers, it's a contest of information. And I mean, if the defense is able to establish this tampering that's been alleged by them, then the burden shifts. There's a presumption of a tainted process, and that presumption is a strong one.
All right, Joe McCullough, we'll be watching this closely. You're now, as I said, representing two of the jurors who have filed affidavits with the defense.
All right. So now that we heard that, I do want to bring up that motion for new trial again. And let's take a look at a couple parts here. So this is the egg juror, and this is right in response to what he was saying. The jurors didn't understand, they didn't know. And also when Harpootlian spoke before about, did Judge Newman ask the right questions? Should he have followed up more? Maybe he's going to be a witness. That's why we didn't find out if the jurors knew something was going on at the time versus now. Let's take a little look at that. And when I talked about poking holes in some of Murdaugh's team's arguments, this is one of the holes that's being poked. So this is the egg juror's affidavit. During presentation, the defense, he testified, and Rebecca Hill said, "Don't be fooled." And here we go. In late February, Ms. Hill questioned me about a Facebook post on the Waterboro word of mouth page. She summoned me to speak with her alone in an office in the courthouse. She told me someone emailed her about a post my ex-husband Tim Stone purportedly made, which purportedly stated that I made comments to him about the guilt or innocence of Mr. Murdaugh. She directly asked me whether I was inclined to vote guilty or not guilty. I told her I had not made up my mind, that I wanted to hear the evidence before deciding. Ms. Hill said that the post said I had been drinking with my ex-husband and that while drunk with him, I expressed opinions on guilt or innocence of Mr. Murdaugh. That never happened. And I told Ms. Hill it never happened. I did not go drinking with my ex-husband. In fact, I had not seen him in approximately 10 years. I asked to see the post. Ms. Hill would or could not show me the post. I have never seen it, and to my knowledge, no one has. Later that day, Ms. Hill told me SLED and Colleton County personnel went to my husband's house, and he purportedly confirmed he made the post. She told me she would reinstate a restraining order I previously had against my ex-husband. I did not know about the apology post referencing Satan until Ms. Hill's book was published. I have since reviewed the post and can definitely state the post is not my ex-husband. He does not go by Timothy. The profile picture is not him. The phrasing of the post is not phrasing he would use. It appears to post by another person who happens to have the same name. It does not appear to post the Walterboro World of Mirth Facebook page. When Ms. Hill first asked me about the Facebook posting purportedly made by my ex-husband, I showed her a picture of my ex-husband. For that reason, I now believe she always knew the apology post referencing Satan was not posted by my ex-husband. Okay. So here are some of the important parts. Number 8, she says she showed her the picture. It was clearly not her ex-husband. So she knew Ms. Hill was up to something fishy and knew that this was not Tim Stone, this juror's ex-husband. Number 9, paragraph 9. On March 2nd, the day of the verdict, I received a call from my ex-husband, Tim Stone, as I was getting on the bus to travel with the rest of the jurors to the courthouse. I did not answer. This phone call upset me greatly, and I asked to speak with the clerk of court, which I did by telephone using bailiff Mr. Bill's phone. I told her I was scared. She said she thought that the Murdaughs probably got to him. This is all stuff she knows at the time, right? Ms. Hill then again asked me questions about my opinions regarding the guilt. She asked if I was leaning one way or the other. I told her Creighton Water's closing was good, but I still had questions. She asked me what kind of questions I replied, questions about the guns. She asked what would make me take care of it, whatever. She then asked about the views of the rest of the jury. Okay, it's another important part. She told me if the 4-person would just go in and ask for a raise of hands, it would be over and done with. She said everyone needs to be on the same page. She then again said she would reinstate a restraining order I previously had against my husband. I then went to the jury room. Approximately 10 minutes later, I was excused from the jury. During the proceedings, I asked Judge Newman if he had spoke with the clerk of court. He only said, "This is not because of your ex-husband." So now we skip down to some more recorded events that were contemporaneous with some of those meetings with the clerk of court and Judge Newman that happened at the time. And so now we get some contemporaneous statements made by this juror and Judge Newman and the clerk, and we can compare it with her new affidavit that states this wrongdoing by the clerk. And this is interesting. All right. Here we go. The court. Have you put anything on Facebook? Juror. This is the egg juror. Not regarding the case. I put a positive post on. I gave Miss Becky my full access to my Facebook. I've put positive posts on. I've done that for the past 3 years. But, and then the court says, has anyone posted anything on Facebook about you? The juror said, I wasn't aware of it until Miss Becky told me today. The court said, what did she tell you? Specifically, what did she tell you? She asked me if I had an ex-husband. I said, yeah. And she asked me if I had talked to him about the case or being on jury duty. I said, no. And I questioned her why she was asking me that. I haven't seen my ex-husband since 2014. That all tracks. Then the court asked, does he live in the area? The juror said he does now. He lives in Cottageville. Okay. And I have 3 restraining orders against him, warning. And the judge says, so basically he's up to no good. The juror says, I wouldn't say that. I'd say a lot worse, but that's a nice way to put it. Court says, okay. Then the juror says, without another question, but she told me that. I was very upset after she told me that. Like I said, I have 3 restraining orders against him. I wouldn't have anything to do with him if I didn't have a child with him, but I haven't seen him since 2014 when we got a divorce. I have talked to him within the last year because I got a call at work that my son was in jail and needed a ride home. And I did call his father to ask him to go get him, which he did not do. But other than that, I have not seen him, talked to him, or anything else since 2014 other than getting a restraining order in Colleton County, 1 in Orangeburg County, and I have 1 in Berkeley County. Wow, the court said. But, and here's the juror, Ms. Becky said she had went to look for the post again and that it had been deleted. And I don't know who she talked to or anything else, but she said apparently, and the court said, when did she tell you that? Again, the court is surprised at this interaction between the clerk and the juror. It was after you let us go on that last break, which again tracks with the timeline with a lot of the jurors that have issues. I was very upset, and she came down and talked to me and said that apparently I don't know who talked to him, but she said he was drunk and removed the post. I don't know who talked to him is very different than maybe the Murdaughs got to him. So one plausible explanation is maybe she didn't tell the judge because she didn't want to get booted off this jury. But at the same time, if Ms. Becky said the Murdaughs probably talked to him, that's very different than I don't know who talked to him. The court then said, so has she discussed this case with any of the other jurors? Has the clerk discussed anything about the case with anyone on that jury? And the juror says, not that I'm aware of. To me, that is in direct contradiction with her affidavit, because at the very least, has the clerk discussed anything about the case with anyone on the jury? That includes yourself. And the judge is specifically asking you this. And I can understand being scared, and I can understand not wanting to accuse the clerk of court. And that's pretty much, I think, what she's going to have to say and argue now. But this juror says that day, not that she's aware of. And the clerk said, okay, she was just discussing with, and the juror said, she pulled me aside. We went downstairs after the last break. I want to say it was after lunch, and we came back. That's when she first told me about it. And then when we went back into court, I was kind of screening the audience to make sure my ex wasn't out there. And she came downstairs after the break and told me she had found out that he was drunk and made a drunk post. And I don't know what happened from there. I have no clue. And the court said, you work at and the juror said, I work at the monkey farm, or at a monkey farm. A monkey farm? What do you do there? I work in the lab for the lab. All I do is watch monkeys. It's a testing facility where they try and come up with cures for like AIDS, cancer, leukemia. Court said, you're happy to be here away from the monkeys for a while? And she said, yeah, but I miss my monkeys. Court said, are they pretty smart, as everyone says? Yeah, they're very intelligent. The court said, you've been on jury duty before. I was, but it kind of really sucked because they called us back when we were, anticipating it was my first jury, and they made up an agreement and we never got to sit on the jury. So the case settled. Sit right here, follow her for a second. That satisfies it. Okay, Your Honor, I think that satisfies it, Mr. Griffin said. She hasn't talked to anybody, hasn't expressed an opinion. Court said that's understandable. Have a good night. And we know later that she ends up getting dismissed. But here's the part I want to read. The clerk said, a name, Clifford Dandridge, B Street. Oh boy, I'm not too pleased about the clerk interrogating a juror as opposed to coming to me with it. Mr. Griffin said, I'm surprised to hear that. So again, this kind of cuts both ways. It does prove that at the time, the clerk of court was pulling jurors to the side and having private conversations with them. But it also proves that at the time, this juror said the clerk wasn't talking about the case with me or anybody else, to my knowledge. Very interesting to me. And this also shows that Judge Newman was asking questions, but what's he supposed to do if the jurors just don't tell him? Sue asks, I don't think Becky's motive was money from the book. I think it was her true dislike of the Murdaugh family all the way back to 1950. This is documented on the back page of her book. Interesting. Kristen was late, so you may have covered it, but South Carolina Attorney General said yesterday they have SLED investigating. I'm sure Murdaugh's team will love that. John, do jurors have the right to counsel present during questioning? It's not a right like counsel will be appointed and paid for them, but they have a right to counsel if there are any criminal implications. L. Jones, shout out to Kimberly Jolly and Fat Quarter Shop. Just never know who you may run into here. Elf, with Judge Newman doing post-trial interviews, doesn't that exclude him from a new trial? That's an interesting question. I think they might be able to ask to get him booted because of some of the stuff that he said, if they want to, that he may be biased, but I don't think he really did anything in any of the interviews that would make him seem biased. I also think that he can defend his statements in sentencing that Murdaugh had been convicted at that point. If he's now presumed innocent again, in my mind, he's presumed innocent. But at that point, he was a convicted killer of his family. So that's how I felt about somebody who had been convicted of killing their family. Also, the mandatory retirement is coming, I think, in December. Izzy, looking dapper, Peter. I have mixed feelings about Eric Bland and his constant involvement in everything relating to Murdaugh's. Hi from the UK. All right. This was a good time, Izzy, for that. Because now that we see these contradictions, let's pull up and talk about what Eric Bland has to tweet about this case. So this is his Twitter. Let me pull this down so we can take a look. So first, let's pull this up. For immediate release, Bland Richter responds to Murdaugh attorney's press conference demanding new trial. Attorneys Eric Bland and Ronnie Richter of Bland Richter Law Firm, who represent multiple victims of Alec Murdaugh, have released a response to the newly filed motion for a new trial for Murdaugh. Defense attorneys for Alec Murdaugh alleged that Colleton County Court Clerk Becky Hill tampered with the jury that found him guilty of the murder of his wife and son. And here's the quote. It is an extraordinary thing to accuse a clerk of court with jury tampering. I agree. It is an extraordinary thing. And if it's true, there are extraordinary circumstances and remedies that are needed. The right to a fair and impartial trial is the bedrock of our judicial system. Time will tell whether there is any merit in this latest Murdaugh missive, or whether this is just another Murdaugh misdirection. What do you think they think? In the meantime, it is important to keep in mind that the system has to work even for the worst of us. This is only our assurance that it will work for the rest of us. I love that second part. And that's what I was going to say. Regardless of what anybody says about Eric Bland or how people feel about him, I personally, just from what I see, I think he seems like he's a very good lawyer. Okay. And that's just from what I've seen and read and kind of watched and how he represents people in these situations and the results he's gotten. But I absolutely think he does not like Alec Murdaugh. I think he does not like Alec Murdaugh's attorneys, but I would be willing to bet, I've never spoken to Eric Bland. I would be willing to bet a lot of money that if these allegations are true about the clerk of court, Eric Bland absolutely believes Alec Murdaugh should get a new trial. Could be wrong, especially when I'm being so absolute and factual about it, but I would be willing to bet, so it's my opinion, that if the clerk of court was trying to sway juror members towards guilt during the trial, I believe he would think Alec Murdaugh deserves a new trial. Now, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but let's take a look at some of these tweets that he had. It was pretty interesting. So let's bring up this one. It is our oh no, that's not the one. That's the second one. Here we go. At the press conference, and this was made at 1:59 p.m. on September 7th. By the way, that initial press release was on September 5th. So 2 days later, at the press conference earlier this week, Dick Harpootlian suggested that the jurors should get lawyers. How offensive is that? I would never be offended if somebody hired a lawyer. People are saying Miss Becky hired a lawyer. That's great. I think she needs to hire a lawyer. I think that's what lawyers are there, supposed to protect you. How threatening is that, Eric Bland said. Now, maybe threatening. I don't find it offensive, maybe threatening. Obviously, Ms. Hill had to get lawyers and pay for them. If any juror feels that they need legal representation or just to get some advice, please feel free to call Ronnie Richter and me. We would not charge a fee for the consultation or representation. It's just disgraceful that the people are having to pay for legal fees in this most unfortunate situation. And he is right. That is unfortunate. If you become a juror on a trial, just imagine now you got to pay legal fees because people are starting to threaten you because they don't like your verdict. That is horrible. And that's not a precedent we want to set either. So it's kind of like what is it? You come for the king, you better not miss or something like that. So this better be true because he's kind of setting up. You're screwing these jurors if this is in fact not true. All right. So this was at 1:59. The next one is at 4:14 the same day. So just a couple hours later, didn't take long for that tweet to go out to thousands of his followers. It is our profound honor to be representing two of the jurors from the Murdaugh murder trial. Dick suggested the jurors should lawyer up, and that's exactly what our clients have done. They stand ready to participate in any proceedings that may follow, but we will ensure that they will not be harassed in the process. So, are people going to read in that maybe Harpootlian and Griffin harassed other jurors? I don't know. Do we think that Eric Bland's jurors may have been one of the jurors that said, who's talking? I don't know. But they'll be able to corroborate or at least testify to what their version of the events is. And that's important. And then here we go. This was just 5 hours ago today. It shouldn't come as a surprise that on a jury of 12, there are different points of view about what transpired with Becky Hill. Two sides to this story. Shouldn't come as a surprise that some jurors may differ as to what happened and didn't happen, including what was said and not said. The truth always outens, and it will reveal itself here as well. For our part, we will ensure our clients are protected in telling their truth. Isn't that interesting? So what do you think? Do you think that these jurors are going to agree with or corroborate what those other jurors were saying that might give Alec Murdaugh a new trial, or no? I don't know. Gosh, this is interesting though. Was there any more? Oh, Ronnie Richter. Let's see what he had to say. The Sixth Amendment secures to persons the right to be tried by an impartial jury reflecting fair cross-section of the community. RBG. Impartial means free from outside and improper influence. This issue is so much larger than Murdaugh. At this point, no one knows the truth. I know that it is imperative we find out. So this is after they were hired. This is today. They were hired yesterday. So isn't that interesting? I like the public nature of some of these comments because we get to know what these lawyers are thinking, and we get some context and some understanding about where this might be going. Salty Beach Girl asks, have you ever heard of the jurors being separated in two rooms by sex? No. And that's also just an interesting little wrinkle, right? Because it's like, well, you didn't hear Miss Becky say all this stuff. It's like, well, I was in the men's room, not the ladies' room. It's like, well, I was in the female room, not the male room. It's like, that's weird. That's really weird. Krista, could she be linked to the leak of the autopsy photos? I have no idea. I don't want to start guessing there. Cats got my tongue. Bad time for Alex to lose his phone and tablet privileges. That's true. Ellen, defense has asked Sled to stand down. Unfortunately for the defense, that's not their call. Now, They can have some leverage there and say SLED has screwed this up so much. It would just be more corruption to have SLED involved. And usually court systems and justice systems don't even want the appearance of impropriety. So I could understand why they might not go that way. But honestly, folks, this is not normal. Don't expect cases to look like this in the future when we cover and talk about cases. This is wild. Law enforcement accusations of corruption, lawyers accusations of corruption, court clerks, jurors. This is unusual. And like Bev asked earlier, this is not normal for our legal system. It does happen from time to time, especially when high-powered and rich and famous lawyers get involved, and maybe they can sway and change the system. It's not how it's supposed to be. Not how it's supposed to be at all. Pure jealousy. How many jurors from other cases might come forward against Ms. Hill? I don't know. And if they don't, will the AG's office and the people, that represent the jurors that say she did nothing wrong, will they come out and use that as evidence? If she does this, you really telling me that this is the first case she did in? Now, I think based on her own interviews, if I was Murdaugh's lawyers, I'd say, yeah, Judge, this is the first case she did in. Listen to what she's saying. Seeds were planted before the trial. Write a book. Historic trial. So I see that argument as well. Regina said, at this point, I'm finding it hard to trust anyone. Regina, I do feel like, again, I don't know any of these people personally, but I do feel like at this point, with this South Carolina system, I'm taking everything with a grain of salt. I'm naturally skeptical, and this case has just made me more skeptical about what's happening. So we hit a lot. We hit a ton today. Oh, and a lot of people are asking if it's a conflict of interest for Poot's old law partner to, you guys got me. I usually call him Harpoolian. His old law partner for representing these jurors. No, I don't see any conflict there. They're not law partners anymore. And then it's definitely not a conflict for Eric Bland unless I'm missing something for him to represent these jurors. He doesn't represent Alec Murdaugh. There's no conflicting interest between his clients that I know of and these jurors. Obviously, there could be something in the background that we don't know about, but what's public and what we know about, I don't see it being a conflict personally. Sue said, have we had a normal trial since you started this channel? You guys usually ask me about the weird ones. All the normal ones I'm doing myself in my office. Thank you, Azam, for the super sticker. I'm glad to see you. People ask about this shirt. This is from Nicole Wheeler. I haven't seen her in the chat the last couple. Hopefully she's okay. Debbie, Steve Gosney commented today about Florida jury instructions and their bias to prosecution. I asked him to reach out to you. Hope you do a joint stream. He is correct, but we could do a joint stream. Ciara, thank you for the super sticker. And we will go out on this. I appreciate everybody so much for joining. Yeah, we got about 7,000 people in here. Let's get it up to 7,000 likes. The last two Murdaugh videos have gotten over 10,000 likes, which is wild. So don't forget to hit that like button. We're done for today. I'm actually going to go on News Nation at like 4:30 talking about the YouTube mom that was arrested for child abuse. A ton of you have asked me about that case. So I'm going to be on News Nation. So go, and if there's any like videos posted, comment on it. Say you came from here. Oh, yeah, Ruby Frank. Whoops. Oh, there's a hearing about to start. Maybe that's why they're having me on. I haven't seen the hearing. So I'm probably going to start looking into this case next week. But we do have Sarah Boone and Lori Vallow videos posting this weekend. So subscribe and hit that reminder bell as well. All right. I appreciate everybody joining me. It's all we got. Until next time, I am out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who might be interested here on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on all social media, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, at Lawyer You Know. But on Instagram, we are still at Tragos Law. So look us up on there. And don't forget to listen to the Lawyer You Know podcast, available on all major podcast platforms. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. Of course, all of these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.